Throughout the years, Black artists have been taken advantage of.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk about
And
it.
it's time now that we have to put a stop to this incredible injustice.
You're not supposed to do this in my business. I'm up here doing something that nobody else in this business has the balls to do.
Yeah.
I'm telling you something that you need to know.
What's going on, bro? I don't know if I should tell you this, but I don't know who may be listening. There may be a group of people that want to get rid of me. They don't want me here anymore.
I don't understand it. What do you mean?
Talk about it over the phone.
The media, man, it is one hell of an entity. It really can have you thinking that the bad people are good and the good people are bad.
We're listening to Mike right now. Obviously, this is a really sad time right now, but we're celebrating his life. Your thoughts right now on the situation and the timing of this tragedy?
Yeah, I mean, he just somebody that changed my life. You know what I'm saying? Somebody I'll always love and cherish.
I believe that they gave me a raw deal because this industry is a monster. It's the same monster that these Me Too was trying to tell you about. But they hate the monster for how it, and I hate that monster for how it eats. But my God, man, it's the same monster.
Michael Jackson did not just sing about injustice. He called it out directly, named names, described record executives as devilish, and said black artists were being used up so a small group of men could stay rich. Right after that, everything changed. The media began turning a worldwide icon into Wacko Jacko. Oprah started questioning the image he built, while men like Diddy stood in front of cameras showing emotion as they built empires behind closed doors that former staff later described like nightmare scenes. Dave Chappelle called it the monster, a system that consumes people and then blames them for being trapped inside it. So what if Michael Jackson was not torn down because he was strange, but because he understood exactly how that monster worked and chose to say it publicly? Michael did not begin this battle with scandals. He began it by talking about money.
Throughout the years, Black artists have been taken advantage of.
Right. Yeah. Talk about it.
And it's time now that we have to put a stop to this incredible injustice. And like Mrs. Sharpton was saying, people from James Brown to Sammy Davis Jr., some of the real pioneers that inspired me to be the entertainer that I am. These artists are always on tour because if they stopped touring, they would totally go broke. And it's been, the record companies really do conspire against their artists. They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can, especially the Black artists.
Yeah.
Yes, and Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a meme, he's a racist, and he's very devilish. Yeah. So I need your support, not just for me. When you're fighting for me, you're fighting for all Black people.
On that London stage, he was not rambling. He was testifying. He said black artists pour their whole lives into the music, then watch powerful executives like Tommy Mottola sit in offices and collect the real checks. He accused Sony and the major labels of working against their own talent, holding catalogs hostage, and throwing away legends once they had squeezed out every last dollar. This was not the language of a confused pop star. This was the language of a man who had gone through his contracts line by line and realized the scam.
Been many disgusting statements made recently concerning allegations of improper conduct on my part. These statements about me are totally false. As I have maintained from the very beginning, I am hoping for a speedy end to this horrifying experience to which I have been subjected. I shall not in this statement respond to all of the false allegations being made against me, since my lawyers have advised me that this is not the proper forum in which to do that. I will say that I am particularly upset by the handling of this mass matter by the incredible, terrible mass media. At every opportunity, the media has dissected and manipulated these allegations to reach their own conclusions. I ask all of you to wait and hear the truth before you label or condemn me. Don't treat me like a criminal, because I am innocent. I have been forced to submit to a dehumanizing and humiliating examination by the Santa Barbara County Sheriff Department and the Los Angeles Police Department earlier this week. They served a search warrant on me, which allowed them to view and photograph my body, including my penis, my buttocks, my lower torso, thighs, and any other area that they wanted. They were supposedly looking for any discoloration, spotting, blotches, or other evidence of a skin color disorder called vitiligo, which I have previously spoken about. The warrant also directed me to cooperate in any examination of my body by their physician to determine the condition of my skin, including whether I have vitiligo or any other skin disorder. The warrant further stated that I had no right to refuse the examination or photographs, and if I failed to cooperate with them, they would introduce that refusal at any trial as an indication of my guilt. It was the most humiliating ordeal of my life, one that no person should ever have to suffer. And even after experiencing the indignity of this search, the parties involved were still not satisfied and wanted to take even more pictures. It was a nightmare, a horrifying nightmare. But if this is what I have to endure to prove my innocence, my complete innocence, so be it.
And when he finally sat down to address the darkest claims against him, listen to how he described what happened next. Raids, humiliation, being strip searched, and his home torn apart. He spoke about the cruelty of it all, the way the system treated him like an animal before any jury had even heard a single word. To him, the accusations were not just lies. They were punishment for stepping out of line. That is the part most people miss. These stories did not appear out of nowhere. They exploded right after he started calling out the money men on camera.
Imagine now my understanding of the facts surrounding the MJ case, that he went to war with Sony, one of these major companies, and he was winning that war. And then suddenly the world was told that Michael Jackson is or somebody is an anti-Semite. Michael Jackson, I think, was called all of those things. Wacko Jacko. They gave him a name.
How do you feel when they call you Wacko Jacko? It's not nice. I'm not a wacko.
The exact same tactics that they tried to use on me. Someone pressed a button and there was a full court press effort to cancel Candace Owens by trying to convince the people that she just went crazy and anti-Semitic. Thank goodness I'm not from Hollywood. They would have institutionalized me and said that it was for my good. There are a ton of people in Hollywood who, when they have tried to speak out about things that are happening to them, have received this same treatment. I believe this is what happened to Britney Spears.
People like Candace Owens, who openly says she once believed Michael Jackson was guilty, now admit that the timing looks like a deliberate takedown. She points out that these narratives went nuclear, just as he was winning his battle with Sony, and that she has experienced the same kind of cancellation machine herself. So before we even get to Oprah or Diddy, remember this clearly. Michael Jackson did not just have fame, he had leverage. He understood how the business truly worked. He said it publicly, and the moment he did, the story built around him changed forever.
But the very first allegation came against him, made from a screenwriter in the industry. He was both a screenwriter and a dentist named Dr. Evan Chandler. It was based in Los Angeles, and his accusation was that Jackson had his 13-year-old son, Jordan. Horrific. Now, how this came about was that Jordan told his psychiatrist that Jackson had him. And then the LAPD began a criminal investigation. But the investigation actually found no physical evidence against Jackson, and it was closed. The case was closed less than 1 year later. Now, that should have stopped the media from reporting on it. Michael Jackson wasn't guilty, but we know the media has never let facts get in the way of them having a good time. They broke the allegations worldwide, which led Michael Jackson to cancel the second leg of his Dangerous World Tour in August of that same year. And he cited health issues, health problems that were stemming from the stress of the entire scandal. And do you want to know what actually added to the stress? This is actually horrific. His sister. LaToya Jackson came right out and she said, yup, Michael Jackson is a... But then something weird happened. She didn't provide any evidence. She didn't even attach that statement to a story. And when people prodded her about that, why did you say your brother is... She admitted that it was her husband who had forced her to make that statement.
The first time they really came after Michael, it was not with think pieces or social media threads. It was in 1993 with a single family and a story that could erase everything he had ever done in one headline. This clip explains how that first case actually began. A father, a custody battle, a sudden change in the son's story, and a media machine that did not wait for a trial before deciding who the villain was. By the time most people heard the full details, they had already been told what to believe.
His father, Dr. Evan Chandler, did in fact drug his child into making the allegation about Michael Jackson. I'm going to read you directly from an article about what Dr. Evan Chandler did. It reads, on August 2nd, 1993, dentist Dr. Evan Chandler was extracting a tooth from his own son, Jordan, when he did something unusual. Under the supervision of an attending anesthesiologist, Dr. Chandler injected his son with a dose of sodium amytal, a barbiturate. Although in pop culture it has sometimes incorrectly been called a truth serum. It is not normal to use sodium amytal to pull a tooth. In fact, it is a psychological drug with sedative and hypnotic effects. Oh, totally normal situation to drug your child, to sedate him with a drug that produces hypnotic effects, and then to ask him, did Michael Jackson you, to which your drugged and sedated son says yes. That is the actual story about how this allegation came about. And once his son said yes, and he recorded that, Evan Chandler then demanded $20 million privately from Michael Jackson. He didn't go to the cops. He went to a lawyer. He said, I won't make this public if you give me $20 million. If you don't give me $20 million, I'm going to make it public. And Michael Jackson told him to kick rocks, allegedly. And then he had his lawyer go back and say, okay, what about if it's just $1 million? And by the way, at this point, it says that his lawyer was like, hey, man, but if your son was maybe go to the cops, right? Like, don't just have me negotiating with the king of pop. Like, you should go to the cops. And he's like, you just keep negotiating. Unbelievably. And during this time, he took his son to a psychiatrist. We love psychiatrists on this show. And he made his son describe graphic details of what Jackson had done to him, but didn't do to any of the other boys who were also present for the sleepovers. Jordan's mother at this point, June Schwartz, she and her new husband thought, I think maybe he could be telling some lies. My ex-husband, maybe he's not that honest of a person. And so Jordan's stepdad, a man named Dave Schwartz, decided to confront him, to confront Dr. Evan Chandler. And not just to confront him, but to record him speaking about what he was going to do to Michael Jackson and co. Take a listen to Dr. Evan Chandler, the dentist, in his own words.
This man is going to be humiliated beyond belief, and I'm not believe that he will not believe what's going to happen. And beyond his worst nightmares, that's that one more record. This attorney I found, I interviewed several, and I picked the nastiest son of a I can find. Once I make that phone call, this guy is just going to destroy everybody in sight.
Then, years later, the truth started leaking out. Years later, the truth started slipping out in places the front page never cared to print. You hear that same father admit he medicated his own child before getting a statement, while pressure and promises surrounded a kid who barely understood what he was saying. It stopped sounding like a search for justice and started looking like adults building a narrative they knew would stay attached to Michael for the rest of his life. Now place that beside Michael's own words. In his statement, he described what it felt like from his side. The warrants, the humiliating searches, strangers tearing through his home, and treating him like property before anything had been proven. He was not speaking like a superstar worried about public image. He was speaking like someone who had just realized how little fame could protect him from a system that had already chosen his role in the story. To him, those accusations were not just false. They were a warning. This is what happens when you step out of line. By the time everything settled, the damage had already been done. The nickname, the late-night jokes, the strange label, those did not come from the courtroom. They came from the way that first case was framed, repeated, and replayed. One family story, shaped and amplified by people with far more power, became the template the media used on Michael forever.
Story, and I know one of your attorneys held a news conference. There was a story about you wanting to have a little white boy play you in a Pepsi commercial.
That is so stupid. That's the most ridiculous, horrifying story I've ever heard. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why? Number one, it's my face as a child in the commercial. Me when I was little. Why would I want a white child to play me? I'm a Black American. I'm proud to be a Black American. I am proud of my race. I am proud of who I am. I have a lot of pride in who I am and dignity. That's like you wanting an Oriental person to play you as a child. Does that make sense?
No.
So please, people, stop believing these
Michael,
horrifying
then
stories.
let's go to the thing that is most discussed about you, I think, is the fact that the color of your skin is obviously different than it was when you were younger.
Yes.
And so I think it has caused a great deal of speculation and controversy as to what you have done or are doing. Are you bleaching your skin? And is your skin lighter because you don't like being Black?
Okay, number one, as I know of, there is no such thing as skin bleaching. I have never seen it. I don't know what it is.
Well, they used to have those products growing up. I used to hear, always use bleach and glow, but you'd have to have about 300,000 gallons.
Number one, this is the situation.
Yes.
I have a skin disorder that destroys the pigmentation of the skin. It's something that I cannot help. Okay, but when people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me.
So it is.
It's a problem for me, okay? I can't control it, okay? But what about all the millions of people? Let's reverse it.
Okay.
What about all the millions of people who sit out in the sun to become darker, to become other than what they are? Nobody says nothing about that.
So when did this start? When did the color of your skin start to change?
Oh boy, sometime after Thriller. Around Off the Wall Thriller. Sometime
and what did you
around there.
think? I mean,
it's in my family. My father said it's on his side. I can't control it. I don't understand. I mean, it makes me very sad. I don't want to go into my medical history because that's something that's private, but that's the situation here. So please, when people see something like that.
I just want to get this straight. Yeah. You are not taking anything to change the color of your skin.
Oh God, no.
You did not purposely.
We're trying to control it, and using makeup evens it out because it makes blotches on the skin, and I have to even out my skin. But you know what's funny? Why is that so?
Once the first wave of accusations had done its job, the next phase was not just legal, it was television. Oprah did not bring Michael on as the greatest entertainer alive. She seated him like a defendant in front of the world and let millions act as the jury from their living rooms. The questions were no longer about music, talent, or legacy anymore. They were about whether people should even feel comfortable supporting him.
For me, this moment transcends Michael Jackson. It is much bigger than any one person.
Oprah Winfrey opened up about her decision to speak to Michael Jackson's accusers for her After Neverland special when she stopped by The Daily Show on Wednesday night. Last month, Winfrey made headlines when she sat down with Michael Jackson accusers for Oprah Winfrey Presents After Neverland, which aired on HBO following the explosive documentary about the singer titled Leaving Neverland.
If they ever found out what we were doing, he and I would go to jail.
Winfrey said of her decision to do the special, "I haven't had that much hateration since I did the puppy episode with Ellen DeGeneres, aka the episode in which DeGeneres came out as gay." The talk show host continued, "But when I saw that documentary, I realized that a lot of people are going to be triggered by watching it, and a lot of people will not understand what the pattern is." Winfrey explained, "People call it, but there is a big seducing that goes on. And that was important enough for me to take the hateration for."
Years later, instead of correcting the record, she doubled down. She hosted that Leaving Neverland special, sat across from those grown men, and treated every word like unquestioned truth. When their stories began to fall apart and their motives started looking more like a money grab, there was no primetime follow-up, no apology, no moment of saying maybe we were wrong. The damage to Michael's name was left hanging in the air on purpose.
So we're on a cruise, is watching all the newses and reading all the newspapers. And she said, "Something's happened to Michael. I don't think it's good." And it scared me because in 1998, I think that was a year. I was in another hotel room. Gail was in, and Gail called and said, something's happened to Princess Diana. I don't think it's good. So when I heard that, immediately I thought, oh my God, could it be? And so we were all stunned. And
Did you ever consider going to either the memorial service or the funeral?
No, I did not consider going to the memorial service or the funeral because I did not consider myself to be a friend of his. And I didn't want to be one of those people showing up just because it's Michael Jackson. So no, I didn't, because I was not a friend. I was someone who had interviewed him and at the time really had a lot of compassion for him.
Mm-hmm.
And
those feelings about him changed over the years?
The feelings didn't change. In terms of my sense of compassion for him, what I felt was a sense of sadness.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew, what the truth was.
And then came the most telling part. When Michael passed, Oprah was on vacation. But not long after, she began distancing herself, acting as if they were never truly close and hinting that her feelings about him had changed. For someone who once used his face and story for one of the biggest interviews in television history, that sudden switch says everything publicly. She benefited from his image, then quietly helped bury it.
Media, man, it is one hell of an entity. It really can have you thinking that the bad people are good and the good people are bad.
Comedians and insiders have been saying this for years. This is how the media game works. The machine can take someone who was once celebrated worldwide and flip the script overnight, painting the good as bad and the bad as good, depending on whatever serves the narrative. With Michael, the interviews, the documentaries, and the concerned conversations were not neutral. They were part of a slow rewrite that turned a global icon into an urban legend.
Listening to Mike right now, obviously, this is a really sad time right now, but we're celebrating his life. Your thoughts right now on the situation and the timing of this tragedy?
Yeah, I mean, he just somebody that changed my life. You know what I'm saying? Somebody I'll always.
On camera, Diddy spoke like a fan. He said he loved Michael, that he cherished him, and that they all grew up on his music. But listen closely, that was not just respect, it was caution. When a man with Diddy's level of power goes out of his way to speak softly about someone, it is usually because he knows that person has seen and heard far more than the public ever will. There were celebrity-filled parties.
Celebrity-driven parties. I happened to come in at a time where he was throwing his 50th birthday party, and they spent millions of dollars building this outside structure in his backyard in Los Angeles. I couldn't believe, wow, I'm a part of this now. It was so, again, exquisite. It was just huge.
But the gloss quickly wore off as his tasks became more sinister. Phil was not only ordered to source a constant supply of drugs for Diddy, he was then forced to carry them around the country.
So we had a laundry list of items that needed to be with us at all times. We'd have their marijuana joints on us. We would have the mushrooms on us. We had a kind of a Diddy pack is what they would call it. And we would keep a satchel on us. And that's what we would have in that satchel.
Always on call, Phil witnessed many things he now wishes he hadn't. He says he worked on the periphery of Diddy's now infamous parties known as freak-offs, although he knew them by another name.
They were referred to me as Wild King Nights. And what a Wild King Night was when him and a guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom, and they would have intimate gatherings. I would have to go and prep that hotel room, which consisted of baby oil, Astroglide, candles, incense, liquor, lights, tons of toiletries, drugs.
Phil wasn't in the room for the parties, but he didn't have to be. He knew exactly what went on behind closed doors because one of his jobs was deleting the very incriminating videos of the Wild King Nights from his boss's iPhones and iPads.
I thought he was this clean businessman who rise to the top because he was such a powerful and, smart, educated man. I had no idea that he had this other side to him. And when I started to get exposed to his lifestyle, I started to really realize, this guy has an addiction. It's not just, once every few weeks. It's every day, every hour.
Behind the scenes, his own assistant described a completely different world. Rooms being prepared, people being moved in and out, and an atmosphere where anything could happen as long as it stayed off the record. That is the kind of environment where secrets are created and careers are controlled. Now put Michael into that picture, a global superstar moving in and out of those same circles, watching how the game was truly being played.
Some people think Oprah Winfrey, they think Harvey Weinstein because they have been linked together so often. First off, Oprah and Harvey have been friends for over 2 decades. A lot of people use the argument that she didn't know about what he was doing, but that's impossible because everyone's known about Harvey Weinstein's reputation ever since the 90s. If you guys don't know who Harvey Weinstein is, he is a major film producer who is pretty much the face of the Me Too movement because he was called out by a bunch of different actresses who he violated. When he was getting canceled and exposed for everything that he has done, Oprah allegedly called him and offered her support. Even though Oprah's team denies this, I believe it because Oprah has been close with Harvey and she has showed him some sympathy over time. Even though he is a disgusting man and he deserves to rot in jail. But I don't understand why Oprah wants to be best friends with someone like Harvey Weinstein. They had a very warm friendship, and the photos show. Some people actually believe that Oprah convinced some actresses to hook up with Harvey Weinstein. And actually, Rose McGowan tweeted out, "I'm glad more people are seeing the ugly truth of Oprah. I wish she were real, but she isn't."
Now look at Oprah. For years, she stood shoulder to shoulder with men like Harvey Weinstein, hugging them on red carpets, praising them in interviews, and treating them like pillars of the industry. Even when their behavior started coming to light, she was slow to pull away. Someone like Michael, who had already called out powerful executives and seen the darker side of the business, would have understood exactly what that meant.
I believe that they gave me a raw deal because this industry is a monster. It's the same monster that these Me Too was trying to tell you about. But they hate the monster for how it eats, and I hate that monster for how it eats. But my God, man, it's the same monster.
Chappelle calls it a monster, and he is not being dramatic. He talks about an industry that builds people up only to chew them up when they stop obeying. Michael was not just another artist inside that system. He was one of the few who had the money, the catalog, and the visibility to call the monster out by name. That made him dangerous in a way most scandals could never erase. Then there is Michael's alleged last call, where he says there is a group of people who want him gone. He does not name names, but he does not sound confused either. He sounds like a man who had put the pieces together and knew exactly what kind of power he was facing. When someone with that level of insight starts speaking, it is not just uncomfortable for people like Diddy and Oprah, it is threatening. So when you line it all up, the praise that sounds more like fear, the shady backroom behavior, the friendships with exposed predators, and Michael's own warnings, you begin to see the real picture. They did not just fear his influence. They feared what he knew, what he had seen, and what he might eventually say out loud.
Chandler, the person who started this initial allegation, he's no longer with us because he committed in November of 2009, just 5 months after Michael Jackson was overdosed. Yeah, Evan Chandler shot himself in the head. There were absolutely no witnesses. There was no note. And he was found by his building concierge. That's just a fun little update for you. But back to Michael Jackson, because even though, like I said, that never went through, they dropped this case in less than a year. The media kind of saw that there was this squeeze on Michael Jackson, but then they let it go. There were no more allegations against Michael Jackson until almost 10 years later, when suddenly there was an explosion of allegations against Michael Jackson. And I want you to remember that year, 2003 is when it began. It began when a boy named Gavin Arvizo accused Michael Jackson of child abuse, saying that he was under 14 at the time of the alleged crime. The singer was then charged because of this allegation with 7 counts of child sexual abuse and 2 counts of administering an intoxicating agent. what does the public actually remember from that time? What do you remember from that time? Well, we remember that Michael Jackson was wacko jacko, that he was crazy, that he was addicted to drugs, whatever his doctor was injecting him with. Here are just some of the headlines: wacko jacko, backo jacko, raid, wacko jacko, jacko on the attacko. I mean, this is like seared into my memory. I'm sure it's seared into your memory as well. This is what I remember. And I also remember that he was anti-Semitic. Yeah, there were headlines calling him an anti-Semite, saying that he hated Jews. And by the way, they had evidence because, so weird, but his doctor who overdosed him also recorded Michael Jackson while he was also clearly sounding like he was high on drugs. Maybe his doctor gave him drugs and then spoke to him. And somehow this recording this conversation between him and the doctor made its way out into the public.
By the time the first firestorm had died down, you would think the story would be over. Instead, a decade later, it flared back up right after Dr. Evan Chandler was gone and could no longer be questioned. The new round of claims did not come with fresh evidence, only louder headlines and recycled talking points. It felt less like justice and more like someone pressing repeat on the same script to make sure Michael could never fully clear his name. That is how we ended up in the Wacko Jacko era. The media stopped treating him like a person and turned him into a running joke. Every late-night monologue, every tabloid cover, and every dramatic expert panel helped cement this cartoon version of Michael in people's minds. Once that image sticks, you do not even need proof anymore. You only say his name, and the audience fills in the blanks with whatever they have been fed for years.
You're not supposed to do this in my business. I'm up here doing something that nobody else in this business has the balls to do. I'm telling you something that you need to know. I'm trying to explain to you what you're seeing. You don't understand what you're seeing. I am publicly flogging a network. And I know that this network, they watching me and they saying, why are you doing this so publicly? Doesn't feel good to be flogged publicly. Oh, believe me, I know. I know exactly how that feels. When I quit my show, they said I was crazy. What was crazy about it? I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Everybody calls me crazy. You know, I mean, it was just...
You're hearing on the news things like he's gone crazy, which that doesn't sound right, you know?
And well, you know, maybe I know stuff people don't want me to talk about. So we don't want other people to believe, so they'll call me crazy. Mm-hmm. But it was a weird thing to get called crazy. At first it was scary, and then now I feel like it's liberating. Like, I feel free, like I can just say what I want to do. They already call me crazy. I can't hold myself accountable for these things. I'm crazy. I can't be held responsible. Yeah. Couldn't control myself.
Yeah. What was the reason that you went to Africa? Was there a reason that you decided to go to Africa?
Well, there are a few reasons, but I mean, you know, if you a black dude trying to hide, Africa is a good place.
Chappelle has talked about this exact trick. The moment a black entertainer stops playing along with the system, the label appears. Crazy, unstable, off. They did it to Dave when he walked away from his deal, and they did it to Michael the second he started exposing how the industry really works. Once you place that label on someone, you do not have to prove anything else. You just point and say, see, he is not right. Dave explains it plainly. The moment he stopped going along with what the network wanted, they did not call him principled or brave. They called him crazy. He talks about walking away from a huge deal because it felt wrong. And instead of asking why, powerful people pushed the story that he had lost his mind. That is the same playbook they used on Michael. Once you question the machine questions your sanity.
Back in 2007, Oprah Winfrey thought it would be a good idea to open up a boarding school in South Africa. She was inspired by Nelson Mandela and made a promise to him that she was going to create this school. The academy is called Leadership Academy for Girls. Actually, the government of South Africa was against Oprah opening this school because it's an extremely expensive place and the population there there is extremely poor. But yet she opens this school and it's got salons in it, it's got gyms in it. I mean, some people think that this was a place for kids to be human trafficked because they would go and get them ready there for sale. And honestly, we don't need to talk about that conspiracy, but we need to talk about the scandals that have gone down at this school.
These are my girls. These are my girls.
Oprah, look up, man. Good.
Yeah.
So Oprah built this $40 million school in South Africa, and they had 152 students attend. Oprah actually handpicked the 152 students who attended her school, but it wasn't long until some of these students were being harmed by one of the employees of the school. Her name is Virginia, and she was 27 years old at the time, and she was charged with 13 counts of getting inappropriate with the kids. Virginia got physical with at least 6 students aged 13 to 15. So these students were handpicked by Oprah to go and live at this academy, and one of these employees who is managing the dorm is physically touching them and doing things to them and harming them. This was a bad look for South Africa because they have had a problem with children being harmed at school by these employees. But ultimately, Oprah put them in this situation to
look at what was happening in Oprah's own backyard. At her leadership academy in South Africa, an employee was accused of being inappropriate with multiple young girls, and the investigation became a global story. The same media that crucified Michael over rumors suddenly became very gentle, framing it as a tragedy for the school and the country, instead of a personal stain on Oprah's character. Nobody started calling her a monster or giving her a sick nickname.
Wasn't the only scandal that came out of Oprah's school, because ever since it's been open, there's been scandal after scandal. Less than 2 years later, there was another incident where some students were getting physical with each other, and there was a 15-year-old who urged to these victims to keep everything on the down low and not to tell their parents or investigators what happened. So 7 students were suspended from the school, and these girls were alleged to have been intimidating others into partaking in inappropriate behaviors. A letter sent to one of the suspended girls' parents reportedly read, "You have been found guilty of physical contact of an intimate nature with another person on campus, bullying of other girls on campus, and of being dishonest by not telling investigators the whole truth." So I don't understand why Oprah just went to this school like less than a year ago to fix things, yet this is still going on. I mean, how does this 15-year-old get away with preying on their schoolmates and coercing them into lying to officials about it?
And that was not the end of it. There were more disturbing reports from the same academy, students harming each other, a dead newborn found on campus, and stories that raised serious questions about how this so-called safe haven was truly being run. Yet again, the coverage handled Oprah with gloves on. The narrative became concerned mentor trying her best, not a dangerous environment around children. Compare that to how they handled every whisper surrounding Michael. When Dave talks about fleeing to Africa because people around him were trying to medicate him, isolate him, and convince him he was insane, he is describing a system, not just his own story. He says it clearly: when you see too much and stop playing along, they do not debate you in public. They brand you crazy, unstable, and unsafe. Tie that back to Michael and everything clicks. One man speaks out about money and power, and he is turned into the world's favorite punchline. Another woman sits at the center of real scandals involving vulnerable girls, and the machine carefully protects her image. Once you see how quickly they weaponize the word crazy against people who speak too much, and how gently they treat the ones who remain useful, the double standard around Michael Jackson stops looking like an accident. It starts looking like a strategy. So now you have heard the story, seen the patterns, and watched how fast the narrative around Michael Jackson was flipped upside down. But here is what you have to ask yourself. If they could do all of this to the most famous entertainer on the planet, what does that say about the power of the people controlling the story? And second, if the crazy, dangerous, and monster labels were really just tools to silence him, how many other artists are we still judging today using a script that was never true in the first place? If you like this video, hit that subscribe button so you never miss any new uploads. And until then, fam, keep it real.